Well, it's Charles Leclerc who takes pole in Australia, the first Ferrari pole at Albert Park since a certain Kimi Raikkonen back in 2007, and we all know how that season played out. Welcome back to the Grid Talk podcast. This is episode 184, and today we'll be reviewing qualifying for the 2022 Australian Grand Prix. Joining me today is engineering student Owain Medford.
Hello.
Tom Downey from the Everything F1 podcast.
Hello.
And Mikael, Kataja, who's a sport writer.
Hey.
So, we're back in Albert Park for the first time since 2019. Listeners of the show may not know this, but last time there was an Australian Grand Prix, the Grid Talk podcast didn't actually exist. So it certainly has been a while, but we'll start with you, Owain. Charles Leclerc pulled an absolutely blinding lap on his final run. Max Verstappen took provisional pole, but to go 2 tenths faster after looking so nip and tuck, it was a hell of a lap from Leclerc today.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looked like almost in a different league. Obviously, it being sort of nip and tuck, and Max Verstappen actually, pulled out an amazing lap there to put on provisional pole, bearing in mind that he'd not been looking maybe so comfortable through the previous 2 qualifying sessions. But yeah, Q3. He does a great lap, and then Leclerc pulls it out the bag with something kind of exceptional. Which, considering that they're still suffering with porpoising in the higher speed sections of the track, and maybe it's the Ferrari isn't the most complete package right now. Charles Leclerc really, really sort of made it his own, and you say 2 tenths, it's almost 3 tenths faster than Max Verstappen, and it really does seem like we have a fight on our hands. Raw pace, 1 lap pace at least, with a bit of a messy session. Charles Leclerc is showing his class really, and just pulling out the doing what all the great drivers can do, which is pulling out an absolutely sort of brilliant performance when it's it's a little bit up in the air how the session's going to go, and everything like that, and like you say, putting it on pole. Obviously he's going to be sort of he's not maybe got a rear gunner, but with that kind of there's that much of an advantage that maybe he can just do it all on his own tomorrow, and that's sort of set the Scuderia up for a really good start of the season with the first 3 races.
Yeah, it looks like he may have to do it on his own with his teammate down in 9th. But Tom Verstappen, P2, I think he'll take that, considering he has said that he's not been feeling too comfortable with the car. And it definitely looked like that. It was making some errors on his lap, but he's still going to be there for the race. You know what Max is capable of on a Sunday, and Ferrari have admitted that Red Bull do seem to have good long run pace.
Yeah, I was almost surprised to see Max take provisional pole, because he didn't improve in sectors 1 or 2. He had a decent sector 3. I think his best lap came in. I think he came in Q2 when he actually stormed through the field when he really looked at one with the car. It's a shame that you couldn't do that in Q3, but here we are. Like you said, Louis, he is good on a Sunday. We know how racy, should we say, he can get on a Sunday. So he still starts in P2, and he has Perez behind him as well. It's not like he's starting behind both the Ferraris. So it'll be a good opportunity tomorrow for Max to, if he gets a good launch, if Leclerc maybe gets a bit of a bad launch, he could get ahead early. Or maybe we're going to continue to see this new side of Max, where we're going to see him play the strategy a bit more. Instead of chewing through his tires straight away, we might see him back off a bit, sort of bide his time. Especially as Albert Park, we may not see as many overtaking opportunities.
Well, they've kind of taken away one of the DRS zones, of course, before today. So instead of the 4 DRS zones, we now have only 3. But with these new cars, we still don't quite know how they're going to be able to follow around this new track. But guess we'll see tomorrow. And Mikael, P3, Sergio Perez. Of course, we have to put a little asterisk on that P3. He's been investigated for, I think it's been going too fast under yellow
not
flags.
slowing down during yellow flags. Yeah,
But he's less than a tenth off Max. He's looking quite comfortable after another, of course, pole in Saudi Arabia. Maybe he could get a bit of redemption this weekend and get himself on that podium.
Yeah, he was looking very solid, and I mean, with maybe better luck, he might have been challenging Verstappen for what is effectively now the second place after Leclerc got the pole. But yeah, I mean, it's a great result for him to be in the mix in the top three, and especially what Owain was already referring to with Leclerc. He at least is able to provide Red Bull with two cars now, if there is no penalty, starting in the top three. So it's a better position they're starting tomorrow than where Ferrari are, which is the key for them. But yeah, overall, I mean, he's looking good. You can feel that he's very feisty from Saudi Arabia, having had that win taken away from him effectively by the safety cars at the time. So yeah, it was a very good result, and for the team and for himself as well. So I hope he's gonna actually be in the mix fighting for the win tomorrow.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, and Red Bull do have the upper hand with the strategy. But P4 Owain, which makes me very happy as a McLaren fan, especially having to witness the tragedies that occurred in Bahrain. But Lando Norris, P4, that given that McLaren have not met any upgrades at all, I think we're finally going to see that this McLaren is a quick car given the right circumstances.
Yeah, of course. I think that sort of speaks to where they are right now with the car, which might be a little bit concerning. But you got to take the win when they come your way, and to get P4, put it in front of the Mercedes, even who are again a bit stronger than they have been recently. He's managed to put it on the second row, which is always going to be a good thing, and it's sort of a world away from where we were. Was it 2 weeks ago and almost a month ago? Bahrain, it looked like what's happened to the car, and now it's like, oh, okay, it's just sort of finding the circuits where it works well at and taking your advantages where you can get them. It's a good luck from Lando Norris there, but it's a bit best of the rest for me, if only just because I think the pace of the Red Bull and the Ferrari is so far away from them that this is as close as they get. This is sort of like an F1.5 pole position almost. Seeing as it's nearly half a second that Lando's been out qualified by Sergio. But again, that's all you can hope for, really. But based on the first two races, at least, I think this will be delightful for the for McLaren, and it's it's going to set them up for a good race to maybe pick up the pieces. I know obviously the inside of turn one is wider, but there could still be contact. It's still not especially. It's not Paul Ricard, for example, so there still could be the chance of an incident, and we've seen people go from P4 to two very, very good positions before at Albert Park. So this is a really great position, obviously, to sort of mount a challenge on the podium if things go their way.
Yeah, and of course they'll be eagerly waiting for the decision from the FIA about Sergio Perez to see if maybe Lando could be starting within the top three. I know it's 7 o'clock Melbourne time that it's happening. I'm not quite sure how that correlates into UK time of when that meeting is going to happen with Perez and the FIA. But in the meantime, Lando Norris will be starting fourth, and behind him, Tom, is going to be Lewis Hamilton. And given the way that this qualifying session went, you could have even argued that it was surprised to see Hamilton get out of Q2. Never mind put it in fifth, given just how much he was struggling with that car. So many times he was fighting that car through the braking points and just having to wrestle that car to even get a competitive lap time on the board.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be almost a case of damage limitation for Hamilton, because we saw, I think even in possibly Q1, I think it's when he's coming through turn 13, or I could be making that up. The car just seemed to snap oversteer on him as he was coming out. It just looked so unsteady, and so sort of twitchy. Plus the porpoising you can see for both Mercedes drivers. I'm surprised they haven't come out this qualifying session with whiplash or something. Honestly, it's just, they're sort of bouncing up and down. Good thing the cars don't have a roof because they'd have probably had a dent in their head. But no, it's so all those sort of troubles aside, it is an impressive qualifying from Hamilton, I'd say. I think fifth is the best he was ever going to get, +1, because Sainz coming ninth isn't a true representation of his time, which I'm sure we'll also get into in a bit. But yeah, the Merc just looks off. I can't quite say what it is, but it's just the car just looks a bit, it's obviously got some sort of fundamental issue, and we're slightly struggling to see what that is. We say we're struggling to see what it is. We can see it's just doesn't seem to have the aero, and there are power unit issues galore with Merc at the moment, which is not what we've come to expect from them. So for Hamilton, it's actually a pretty good qualifying. I think he might struggle in the actual race because I don't see him getting much further up the field unless a bit of misfortune goes his way or something. But yeah, it was in terms of his actual qualifying pace, it was almost surprising, which seems weird to say because he's obviously such an established and successful driver. But to see him get out of Q2 and then to finish P5, I think he was in the end, it was a bit like, whoa, okay then.
Yeah, and he was pushed all the way by his teammate, Mikael. George Russell, P6. He's also really not having a good time with that car. But again, we call him Mr. Saturday for a reason because he has managed to pull out another decent lap. Just over a tenth off Hamilton, and yeah, it's like Tom was saying, this is kind of like the best Mercedes can hope for at the moment, given the really extreme porpoising that they're having in these faster sections of the track.
Yeah, I mean it's a decent result for Russell and for Mercedes as a team because as Tom was already saying, the only thing that they have somewhat put a foot wrong is the fact that Norris is ahead of them. Like fourth was realistically possible today if because of Sainz faltering. But yeah, I mean Russell did well. He was within a tenth with Hamilton, switching positions through Q1, Q2, Q3. Hamilton just got the better of him, even though from early in the session it would have looked that it might have flipped the other way. Yeah, I mean overall it's a good recovery from what they had in Saudi Arabia as well. So overall it's okay. I am a bit questioning on how they'll do tomorrow in race pace. I don't know. I hope they'll be able to, fight, at least for fourth, I guess, with Norris and eventually when Sainz comes up the field. But yeah, we'll see. It'll be an interesting mix tomorrow in the below podium positions, I think.
Yeah, I think you can even just see from the qualifying times anyway, just how close it is between all those midfield teams. Only 7 tenths separated Norris in fourth and Sainz in ninth. Of course, Carlos Sainz is just really not having a good qualifying today. But we'll move on to the hometown hero, Owain, Daniel Ricciardo, P7. I think, they'll be happy with that given the way that McLaren has been. It's the first time, I believe, Daniel Ricciardo, the McLaren have been in Q3 anyway this season. Have both cars in there. Just goes to testament show that there is potential in this car, as we were saying with Lando Norris. And, hopefully Daniel Ricciardo can actually make it to the end of this race in one piece.
Yeah, he'll be wanting to. I think it's a little bit of a disappointing qualifying for him, unfortunately, because he's 3 tenths off his teammate for me. Sorry, is he 3? No, I can't. Yeah, he's 3 tenths off his teammate. I'm not an idiot. Which is still pretty far. So I think that's going to be a little bit disappointing. but you kind of almost wouldn't have expected the Mercedes to be in front of them based on the performances and based on their performances in practice and things like that. So, maybe they just got caught out a little bit by that. Otherwise, it's he's going to have to do something in the race tomorrow, because otherwise it's going to be properly disappointing. Your home race, your first home race for 2 years. With a new team that should be better based on everything that they've been saying, and it's just, for me, it's a little bit disappointing that he's got to 7th, and that's sort of it. So I think he's going to have to sort of maybe make some risks, which if they come off will look, they're going to look great in front of his home crowd. There's 120,000 people there today, probably more for the race tomorrow. Apparently, it's as busy as it's ever been. From sort of the eyewitness reports, and that he could really put on a real show, if he's lucky, he can make it to the podium. Like 7th isn't outside the realms of possibility. It's a new track. We've seen people making mistakes and putting things wide and putting their cars in the wall. It's not so easy, and that's going to be good if you're if you're starting where Daniel Ricciardo is. The problem is, if he gets swamped at the start, he might have issues where he gets a bit in the sort of melee, and it could cause him issues. But a good start, and I think he's halfway there to having a decent result. He just needs to sort of put some really good laps in, and he's going to have to take a few risks to do it, but he could make up into a really good podium position this time.
Yeah, I mean, given you're right to mention like safety cars, given the way that qualifying went today, we may not be shy of a safety car or two tomorrow, especially if maybe the likes of Nicholas Latifi have anything to say about it. But Tom, Esteban Ocon, P8, and the Alpine was looking solid, especially in the hands of Fernando Alonso, who we'll get on to later. But P8 is respectable from Ocon. He's never always had the match of Alonso too much since Alonso joined Alpine, since he came to Alpine. But P8 respectable, not too far off the McLarens. The Alpine in general looks fairly solid. It could be an interesting race with some decent points up for grabs for tomorrow.
Yeah, it was nice to see Alpine sort of looking that strong, because I had my reservations about them this season, but Alonso especially was putting in some stellar laps. But Ocon, yeah, a good Saturday for him. He's putting his car in a decent position. I think realistically, he probably would have been P8 again had Sainz not been done dirty by the red flag. But the point is that both cars were sort of comfortable in the top 10. They looked like they belonged there. They're putting in good laps, and they were sort of going toe to toe with the cars around them. So it's certainly a good platform for tomorrow for Ocon. He's also got both the Mercs ahead of him. There's quite possibly he could get past them. Especially if they start to struggle with tire deg or whatever. We'll hear Hamilton complain about his tires at some point anyway. But if the Mercs are struggling with sort of race pace or what have you, as we've seen them do so far this season, it's a good chance for, what can I say, to move on up the field.
Yeah, I think there is, like, usually with Albert Park as being a sort of a street circuit, it was a very difficult track to overtake. I genuinely feel with these new cars and the way that the track is, there's definitely moving up the field is not out of the realms of possibility. And for one driver, Mikael, Carlos Sainz, he kind of needs that to be the case. As Tom mentioned, he was caught out by the red flag in Q3. He was about to set his lap time before Fernando Alonso put it in the wall, and then his second run just wasn't clean, and he just couldn't get a competitive lap time on the ball. It's left him down in 9th with quite a lot to do tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, he really got caught out. perhaps like less, around a second more he would have needed, and that lap would have been completed, and he wouldn't have the issues that he's having now. Yeah, it's gonna be a difficult day tomorrow, although like you said, with the new cars, with the changes to the track that we've had, it's probably easier to follow and overtake now than it was a couple of years back. But still, you know, you're looking at the people in front of him. He has both McLarens, both Mercedes, and Ocon to clear before he's even in the fight that he's supposed to be at. Now, I mean, without anything crazy happening and without being able to, you know, massively undercut or overcut people during the pits, that's going to take him at least, I would say, probably 20 to 30 laps to get past all 5 of those. They won't be easy for him, I don't think. And then there's the question of Fernando. I mean, if Alpine is able to, and hopefully they are able to fix his car, then he's also definitely throwing his hat in the game. So it's going to be a tough day at the office for Sainz tomorrow, I feel like. And I genuinely don't think like anything below 4th is going to be a disappointing weekend for him, I would say.
Yeah, and Ferrari going to need all the points they can get. They kind of took the points and ran with them in Bahrain when Red Bull faltered. But if Red Bull are going to continue to be this competitive, their constructors' title is going to require Carlos Sainz being up there, you know, in the top 4 every single race from now on. So, I mean, rounding out the top 10 is Fernando Alonso. It was going from El Plan to El Pain for him very quickly, setting the world alight with his lap before. I think it was a hydraulics issue of some sort that put him in the wall and brought out the red flag in Q3. But man, was Fernando looking mighty competitive up until that point.
Yeah, really competitive. Obviously, looking, you know, he take his Q2 time of 1:18.8, and that puts him ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the Q3 grid for tomorrow's race. So that, you know, he did actually look very, very promising. Unfortunately, yeah, hydraulic issue, which you know, if they can't fix it, that might be a grid drop or something like that. I think he's already had an engine change. Had to have an engine change just because of the way the Renault power unit is set up with a pump of some description that I can't remember exactly which one it was, but yeah, that could be, you know, it could be costly depending on what's damaged. Obviously, it went into the wall. Sort of, it looked like the front left corner went into that tire barrier. But who knows what that could have damaged? And you know, they could be looking at places further back, which is annoying because obviously it's really frustrating. You know, getting, you know, potentially being on the 3rd row of the grid and just not being able to just because of a car issue. I think, you know, that obviously, you know, Fernando is a hugely confident person who knows their own skill. So, you know, he's not going to be too worried about that. But for Alpine, that's got to be an issue when, you know, you've got hydraulic issues costing you results like this. No, that's obviously an issue just to iron out. Otherwise, it's a good qualifying session. So for them, so it's kind of a wasted opportunity, I would say. And you know, best case scenario is a 10th place start for them, but they could be even further back. And as Mikael said, even if they've got pace in the car, it's difficult to come through the field, and it would take a few laps, and it's going to hurt their chances, which is unfortunate. So yeah. Obviously a disappointing day for Alpine, what with Fernando's crash, but you know, assuming they start where they are, it looks like he's got pace in the car, so he could do something tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're all hoping that Alpine are able to get the car fixed, and if they do, then I think Fernando is sort of the more likely out of him and Ocon to move that car up the grid and maybe score more points than just, you know, either 1 or 4 points where they're currently sat. But Tom, as we now move outside the top 10, we have Pierre Gasly in 11th. I mean, he was only 0.2 faster than Tsunoda, which would suggest that there really wasn't much more to give in that AlphaTauri. Probably did as best he could. But yeah, he just wasn't enough to see him into Q3 or and is going to be starting just outside the top 10.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with Gasly because we've almost sort of come to expect that much more from him, where we expect him almost to get an excuse to be pretty much on the reg. But sadly, it didn't quite happen for him today. It's a shame, but he's but he's he's still in a good position. I was about to say, if Perez, that if something happened and he moved into P10, he'd still have free choice of tyre, but obviously that rule's gone out the window this year. You can tell I'm still waking up. He didn't exactly seem to set the world alight today. I didn't really, we didn't sort of hear or see anything of him in quali, but also, we've got Ferrari and Red Bull going out at hammer and tongue this year, so you're not necessarily expecting to. I feel like with Gasly, it's like sort of like I already said, we almost expect more from him because he's been so good for so many years now. And it's actually mad to think that the last time we came to Albert Park, he was in his first race for the Red Bull senior team. It's like if you think back to sort of how long it's been, it's like for me certainly it feels mad that it's 3 years ago. But yeah, hopefully while he's already on for a better weekend this year, because he didn't go out in Q1 this weekend. But no, he's hopefully he has a better weekend, sort of on on both fronts than he did last time we were here.
Yeah, definitely. And it's crazy to think he's had 3 podiums, including a win since then, all with AlphaTauri. But 12th place, Mikael Valtteri Bottas broke his Q3 record now, so a record that's been long-standing since 2017. Has been broken now as he qualifies P12. I don't think they can say they're going to be too disappointed. I think the cars are slowly starting to reveal their true pace now, and that time for Alfa Romeo to start capitalizing on where others have faltered is probably slowly coming to an end now, and they're sort of settling into where we would expect the Alfa Romeo to be in this kind of pack.
Yeah. I mean, it's so sad that his name won't be etched next to Senna and Prost in the record for the most Q3 appearances, but yeah, it is what it is. One thing that was disappointing, I would say, from Bottas is the fact that he wasn't able to improve his time from Q1 in Q2. You look at his time from Q1, 1:19.25. He would have only needed to improve less than 2/10, and he would have, kicked Ricciardo or Hamilton out of Q3. So had he improved his time, he would have easily made it into, well, not easily, but he would have been in the fight to make it into Q10 in a more serious manner. So there's a point of improvement there, and that was the same case for Zhu as well. So I don't know if it's something to do with Alfa Romeo maybe. But yeah, like you said, now we're starting to see that maybe the Ferrari engine isn't a god engine that makes every team that uses it finishing top 10 every time, but instead you're starting to see the other teams with other engines also rise up to the challenge. So yeah, I mean it's an all right position to be in for tomorrow, though there are no tire benefits anymore this year. But yeah, I mean, he'll be able to have a scrappy race there. I don't know how high up he'll be able to climb. Definitely fighting with Gasly for sure, but then is the McLaren Alpine race pace that bad that an Alfa Romeo could be able to fight with them? I don't know. I think it'll take something, some sort of a happening or a different, an alternative tire strategy maybe for him to be in like the P9, P8 fight. But I mean, solid result today. Beat you still, so still, number 1 at Alpha. So it's all right.
Yeah, I don't think his number 1 status at Alpha is probably going to go away anytime soon. P13 for Yuki Tsunoda, Owain. Yeah, I mean, he may be happy that he's only 2/10 off Gasly, but otherwise, not really much you can say about Yuki. It's a performance that we've become fairly familiar with in a car, which doesn't seem to be as competitive this weekend.
Yeah, it's not really as competitive as it has been. It's not really competitive as it was last year, which is unfortunate because obviously it was, there were some really good results pulled out there. Yeah, Yuki's 2/10 off, and it was a bit of a scruffy qualifying session for him, I think. It's just kind of, obviously with him going off, getting that lap time deletion, which seemed sort of pointless, bearing in mind, how far he went off and how slow he had to go. But there's a positive there in that he's only a couple of tenths off of his teammate, so he's not so far away that it's just like what's going on. But it is somewhat worrying that he's not maybe a little bit closer, bearing in mind that actually I was about to say that Pierre Gasly's old, but he's just been in the sport a while. It's just that everyone's getting younger and younger. So Yuki's there. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, it's only 2/10, but on the other hand, I'm just like, you really should be mixing it up. And I think there's positives and negatives to it. The problem is he's sort of in the, as I said before, he's kind of in the sort of melee zone where he could quite easily get tripped up at the start, quite easily get sort of locked behind someone maybe a bit slower if you can't overtake. And you can't really rely on the pace of the car. We think at this point that he's going to be able to blast past them and start pulling in some really good points paying positions, because that midfield looks more competitive than it has been in a long time. And everyone's doing, everyone's putting in good performances. And it just looks a little bit more difficult to move forward in it, and unfortunately that's, I think, cost him points, which is again the same issue that was happening last year. So I think it's less his fault this time. He seems more ready. He seems more fitter and more able to do it than he was last year. But there's I think that there's promise there, but there's still worry to be had as well. So I think we're going to have to see that. I think the proof in the pudding is going to be sort of in the race tomorrow, really.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Snowden, he's one of those drivers who is maybe a little bit more prone to an accident than some others on the grid. And I think he'll be hoping for a clean race, and maybe a clean race given how chaotic qualifying was at times, especially with retirements. He'll want to keep his nose clean with his best shot at points. 14th place for Guan Yu Zhou, Tom. Similar to Sonoda in the fact that he'll be happy that he's in Q2. There's not really much you can say. He's probably doing the best he can with the equipment he's got. And as Mikael mentioned earlier, both Alfa Romeos going slower than the Q1 lap time in Q2. So 14th is pretty much where you'd expect him to be. Not so bad for a rookie.
Yeah, this is what third race in F1 now, and whilst he's not set the world on night, he's about where you'd want him to be. He's not doing any stupid mistakes like you Stroll and Latifi. He's keeping it on the track. He hasn't binned it into the wall or anything, which you could almost forgive a rookie for doing, because obviously the change to F1 from F2 is enormous. Yeah, he was what, 2/10 for his teammate, something like that. I'm not entirely sure of the gap. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong, which I usually am.
Around 7/10.
7/10. Oh, there we are then. Okay, so a bit of a bigger gap, but also his teammate is Valtteri Bottas, who's just spent 5 years being Hamilton's whipping boy. So Bottas knows his way around a car, as we know, and yeah, for Zhou. Or do we call him Zhou or Guan Yu? I can't remember the name in customs.
It's Zhou Guan Yu.
It's Zhou Guan Yu. Thank you. Yeah. So for him, I think it was a decent result. The car did seem to lose a bit of pace as the temperature began to drop a bit as the sun went in. maybe he lost a bit of tire temperature, or the car lost a bit of operation temperature. I'm not quite sure. Or maybe or maybe he just didn't have the pace, quite for that second run. I don't know, but he still had a decent qualifying. Again, we sort of didn't really see anything of him, which, like I just said, is not necessarily a bad thing, because it means he can just get his head down and sort of almost remain out of the spotlight that is F1 and F1 social media and the press and everything. It means he can just crack on with driving the car, getting used to it, getting used to all the different nuances of the F1 cars. Getting used to the sort of increased pressure, all the rest of it, all that all comes around it. So yeah, so I think whilst most people say they go, oh, he's P14, that's pretty poor. I don't necessarily think so. I think it was a decent quality for him. Obviously not ideal. He'd have liked to have been into Q3, but I think that is about where that car was going to get. So hopefully tomorrow, may work his way up the grid. Hopefully we might even see him perhaps sneak a naughty little point or something, because no doubt both the Alpines will go pop because of their French reliability. So we'll so there may be some room to move up the field.
Yeah, this is a race is never decided on Saturday unless it's Monaco, so anything can happen. So round up Q2, Mick Schumacher P15, Mikael. The Haas not looking so good, but I think Mick will take some satisfaction at the fact that he outqualified his teammate, at least got into Q2. He may not be too pleased that he's down in 15th given the pace that Haas have had, but maybe similar to Alfa Romeo, Haas's time of taking points off struggling teams is maybe now sort of slipping away from them.
Yeah, definitely. It's felt that throughout the entire weekend, Haas isn't where we, not necessarily got used to seeing them, but where we saw them in the last 2 weekends. But yeah, for Mick, it's a decent result. Anytime you're not eliminated in Q1, you can pat yourself a little bit on the back. Outqualifying Magnussen also a plus point for him. Although, to be fair to Kevin, even though we'll get to him later, but his second run was compromised due to the Dumb and Dumber Canadian edition, as I shall call it. And then he just couldn't do anything in the last 2 minutes. It was a very scrappy situation where I don't think maybe one or two of the drivers improved their times, and that's it. Or Vettel got a time in general. So yeah, Mick did an all right job. P15, it's okay to start from, but yeah, I don't know. I wish this is not the reality for Haas. I very much like their Cinderella story, but I don't know. Maybe the clock already struck midnight, I guess.
That's actually a pretty good analogy. Maybe. So we'll now move into the bottom five, and yeah, trust me, we will get onto that Latifi and Stroll incident later. I will want to hear all of your opinions on what was a very bizarre accident. But before that, P16 for Alex Albon. Owain, you're comparing him to Nicholas Latifi, so obviously he's going to be quicker, and he was again today. But it's just nothing really coming from that Williams. We expected so much from them, and it's just not coming to any sort of fruition. It looks like that Williams is destined to be towards the back.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. They're in a similar position to Haas as last year, and it looks like they haven't even been able to, get some points out of the first two races. And now that they're for them now they've qualified basically, terribly. It's an awful thing to have happen for them. There's not really any pace in the car. Just looking at the lap itself, outside of any other factors for Alex Albon, it's not too far off a Q3 time. sorry, a Q2 time. Sorry, slightly better lap. Maybe the reliability that caused him to have to stop the car was a bit of an issue. Maybe that also I don't know if that lap was set in that sort of 2 minutes to go qualifying race that we had. But it's pretty close, and maybe it could have done better in clean air if it was the last lap set. The biggest issue really for Albon here is that he's going to be starting probably 19th. He's got a 3-place grid drop for last week's outing in Jeddah, where I believe it was Stroll he hit, sent it up the inside, and obviously it really didn't work out. It's kind of so he's starting 19th with a not amazing lap. Luckily, Latifi did set a lap, so we actually have something to compare it to. But it's still, he's a quarter of a second ahead, so he can take something in that, I guess. But the fact is, it's not a very good performance, and they're starting quite far behind. Basically on the back of the grid, and that's obviously sort of. That's not really acceptable for what they should have been doing with the car. Because as I say, at least Haas managed to go and get points. It hasn't been pacing that Williams all season, which is pretty worrying. And it seems like yet another rule change has slipped them by without them managing to do anything with it. And I know it's really early in the season, but you start looking at them going, what's going on? What can the what can they do to keep moving forward, or can they move forward? But I think again that's outside the scope of it really. Right now it's just looking at Alex Albon, who is probably going to start 19th, and the only reason that Lance Stroll is behind him in that case is because of penalties. Well, is because obviously of his teammates. So yeah, it's really not a great performance.
Yeah. Not great. And you said you can compare with Latifi, and being 1.2 seconds faster than your teammate is gonna at least do your confidence a bit of good, even if your position is only
I completely apologise for that. I got the gap wrong. I honestly just thought he couldn't be that far back.
It's Nicholas Latifi. Anything's possible, it would seem. Tom. Kevin Magnussen, he's been in Q3 for the last two races, scoring points, but this time, qualified P17, as Owain mentioned. He'll start P16 because of Albon's penalty. Yeah, I think points are going to be a bit of a stretch for Magnussen. But, I think they're just settling it, as I've sort of already mentioned with Mick. I think they're just settling into where they're likely to be for the rest of the season.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit of a fall back down, back down to earth with a bit of a bump for Haas. I do think the car is quicker than that. We saw it in the first 2 races, but just today just wasn't quite meant to be. Not helped obviously by McLaren drastically improving their pace this weekend. And yeah, good chat, Tom. But yeah, points. Yeah, probably a bit of a stretch. I'd say, like you said, Louis. I'm so sorry. This early start on a Saturday is not for me. I like to have a lie-in on a Saturday. Points is going to be one of those things. I think there would have to be a bit of misfortune in front of him with a couple of retirements, maybe a safety car and all the rest of it. It's Haas. I don't know. It's a weird one because also they're such a good start to the year. They're 2 brilliant qualifying some points finishes. Mixed on the cusp of points as well. And then obviously had that horrible crash in Saudi. So I don't know. It's weird because part of me is just like, oh heck, are we going to see them back in their sort of 2021 ways? Where they were just woeful. But no, that's reserved for Williams this year. So I don't think we need to worry that Haas will be that bad, because they're not going to be that bad. They won't get that far sort of back down the grid. But just this weekend is just on sort of like bedding in, if you like, and sort of settling in a bit. Because this is the first. Well, no, it's not the first switch to career, because we were in Jeddah 2 weeks ago. But Albert Park is a very different challenge to Jeddah and to Bahrain. So Haas, I think this weekend will be tough for them. Tomorrow I should say will be tough for them. But I do have faith in them the rest of the season. I think they genuinely will be in the midfield like they have been so far.
Yeah, I think I think we do have to sort of mention the fact that this midfield is really close, and we're going to see teams jump up, jump down. It's going to be so track dependent, depending on what cars suit which tracks is going to be. I think it's going to be quite a mix, at least for a while, especially as these teams still try to figure out the perfect balance for these new cars and figure out what works best for them. So definitely something that Haas will try and take advantage of. Any tracks, maybe like Bahrain, like Saudi, which their car is very quick, they're going to look to try and capitalize as much as possible. But for tracks like Australia, it doesn't suit their car nearly as well. And finally, before we get on to the incident, we have Sebastian Vettel, Mikael. After his crash in FP3, it looked like he may not get out, but actually, thankfully, due to that red flag, he was able to get out, set a lap time. Yeah, it's P18, but he was given one chance in a car in an Aston Martin, which isn't particularly quick.
Yeah, and I mean P18 starting P17, I guess, with Albon dropping behind as well. So yeah, I mean the fact that the real heroes for Aston Martin today were the mechanics, because they got Vettel out in the first place. The position is secondary to the fact that he was actually on the track and got a feel for the car after it getting patched up. Yeah, I mean there isn't much else to necessarily say for Vettel. The red flag got him on the track. It's great to see him back. I'd really just wonder, because you're looking at the cars with the Mercedes engine and they're at the not the very top, very, very top, but you have, McLaren and Mercedes doing relatively well, even though especially Mercedes still looks like they're struggling a lot with the aero. But it's not the engine that's keeping Williams and Aston Martin back. So I just have to wonder how bad their aerodynamics must be to not even be able to really put up a fight against Haas. I mean, yeah, okay, Albon out-qualified Magnussen today, but still, you see those four cars always at the bottom, being eliminated in Q1. It just makes you wonder how fundamentally must there be a fault in the car to have them at the back of the grid all the time. And it's unfortunate to see Vettel there, but I mean, at least we got him back, we got him on the track. But yeah, tomorrow can't see making much progress. As long as I just hope Latifi doesn't take him out tomorrow.
Yeah, otherwise it could end up costing Aston Martin a lot of money. They've already had a very expensive weekend. Not to mention Stroll has had his front left and front right sort of absolutely destroyed in the space of a day. And I'm sure those mechanics are really looking forward to working overnight to try and get that car fixed. So yeah, we'll now move on to it. P19, Nicholas Latifi, his lap was pretty terrible to begin with. Not to mention he didn't really get a second go. And then Lance Stroll did not finish, didn't even get a lap set. So yeah, I mean the basics of the principle of the crash was that Latifi was getting out of the way of Stroll because he believed that Stroll was on a push lap. Stroll wasn't on a push lap, so he slowed down. So Latifi said that he was like, okay, I'm going to just get on with my warm-up lap. Went to overtake Stroll. There was a stupid collision, and it ended both their qualifying and brought out the red flag. So, let's start with you. What did you make of that? Because let's face it, it's amateurish. That those sorts of incidents shouldn't be happening in Formula One.
I think it comes down to ultimately, I think I had some thoughts on it initially. I've sort of gone back and looked at it, obviously, as I've seen it on the coverage. I think it comes back down to sort of the thing you first learn to one thing you're told when you first learn to drive on a motorway or a highway, which is you don't undertake. And that's effectively what Latifi's tried to do here. I think it's on, and also, funnily enough, it comes back to another thing, which is, the driver behind is the driver at fault. Like, Stroll didn't help by having to move, but what was, Stroll was pretty close to the race. He was basically on the racing line. So I think Stroll had to move. That's what he has to do to get out of the way, either incur a penalty or again cause an accident with a faster moving car. Really, Latifi was out, got out of the way and was squeezed a little bit, and then he's obviously realised, but and he's tried to go for a gap that is there, but again, he has to look in his mirrors too, and he should have known that there was a guy on a push lap that Stroll would probably be moving out of the way for, and just kind of, I think it's low situational awareness and lack of foresight from Latifi. I'd put I'm not sure it's enough clear and obvious error to get him a penalty based on that, but I think the rules are now sort of decided when it comes to causing a collision. But it's like you say, it's amateurish. It's a schoolboy error that shouldn't really be happening, because it's a fault of driving on Latifi that again just on the public highway would get you would put the fault in your court. I think it's Latifi's fault, honestly. He's done a sort of a silly overtake when he really didn't need to, and it's almost a bit of justice that he's come off worse, to be honest, because it's just a track rod for Lance Stroll. It's a track rod or a suspension piece, probably, which is not the end of the world. Relatively easily fixable. It'll probably be fixed. It's probably fixed now, to be honest. Bearing in mind that the mechanics have already had to just change one for Vettel's incident, so they're not rusty in any way on that. But I think they've actually changed a few over this weekend. But so I think Latifi's definitely come off worse, and that's honestly it's his fault there.
Yes, fair enough. Tom, what do you make of it? Because when you pay for to take something from the chat of our live stream, it's like you got these two pay drivers and they've paid big time here, and it's not a good look for Canada. It's not a good look for Canada.
No, it's not a good look. Yeah, it's just it's amateur. It's just this is Formula One. This is the pinnacle of motorsport. You don't make silly mistakes like that. Yes, we have accidents because sometimes things happen. Like with Alonso, for example, he appeared to have a hydraulic issue or whatever with his car when he couldn't downshift into third. But you don't in a sport that has so much information, so much data, so much there's so many lines of communication. How on earth can two drivers? How on earth can one driver let another driver go past and think, oh, I know, I've just let it pass, so I'm going to fucking speed up. Apologies for my language. How can you think that? And then the other driver goes, oh, he's going to pass me. I know what I'll do. I'm on a slow lap, so I'll yeet across the track, not check my mirrors, and then go, came out of nowhere. It's just like, just for God's sake. It's like, if someone did that to you in Tesco car park at 5 miles an hour, you'd be miffed. It's just, I'm good on a rant now, but it's not a good look for Formula One. And then what really irritated me was Stroll's attitude afterwards, where he was being interviewed by possibly Natalie Pinkham, I can't entirely remember, but the way he was just like, oh yeah, no, I just moved off the line. Yeah, no, you moved off the line. You've got mirrors on your car, and he was talking about, or the track goes that way a bit. If you watch Curran Chantok's thing of it, he was showing the line that you take in there. I'll tell you who's come off the worst out of all this. It's not Stroll, it's not Latifi, it's not Williams, it's not Aston Martin. It's Canada. They've come out the worst of this. Because I'll tell you what, right? I think the only way to settle this, if they just start slapping each other with bacon and maple syrup, then maybe maybe they can settle it that way. But it's just a bizarre accident. It's like, how can two drivers who are apparently the creme de la creme, debatable, of motorsport have a sort of incident like that? And this isn't the first time Stroll's had an incident like this. As I'm talking, I've just remembered him and Vettel in 2017, possibly China, at the end of the race. Malaysia, thank you. Where Stroll's going across the track and bonk, and Vettel ended up with one of the wheels, sort of like on the top of his car, and it's just like. Formula One does need pay drivers to a point. Does need pay circuits, because a good example of this is in places like Vegas, because the money that comes in from that helps to fund or keep the likes of Spa, Monza, and Silverstone, and all the rest of it going. But if you have a quote unquote pay driver who, yes, they bring in money, but they end up costing even more money because they keep making stupid mistakes like this, what is the point in the first place? Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, as far as I think they should have had a good old-fashioned ice hockey fight, maybe, throw off the gloves and go for it. But I mean, is Stroll even a pay driver these days, considering his dad actually owns the team? He's just a but yeah, there are definitely some good examples of pay drivers. People even argue maybe that Lando Norris is a good example of that, given how much his dad is, but he at least came through the McLaren Academy. But yeah, Mikael, we've had two firm points of view on what happened, but yeah, it just isn't a good look for Formula One when this is meant to be the pinnacle of motorsport. And then you have two drivers just not even in a race. If this was racing, it's hard racing, collisions happen. This was on a warm-up lap for a qualifying, and they've had quite a nasty crash, which is going to, for Latifi and for Williams, is quite a big fix. Potential for a new gearbox if any of those sort of like rear pieces ended up in the wrong place. And then, yeah, for Aston Martin, it's more repairs to a car, which they've had to make this, today, that they didn't really want to.
Yeah, and exactly. It's like the point about this being an amateurish mistake. I mean, the fact that the fact that you kind of can't find a clear person at fault. There's arguments for both, for both sides to be at fault here. It just tells you that there's just such a confusion between the two. I've been rewinding the clip that F1 posted on Twitter about the incident, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, so there's a blue flag for Latifi and actually probably for Stroll as well, because there's an Alfa Romeo. I can't make out if it's João Bottas who's seemingly on a timed lap coming through. And it just looks like Latifi thinks, okay, Stroll is going to pass me because he's on a lap. And then, you come out of turn 5, I think. And suddenly Latifi is like, oh, let me, just like Owain was describing, let me just go back past Stroll, because apparently he's not on a timed lap, even though the blue flag seemed to be for a driver behind the both of them. And then, yeah, just Stroll not looking in his mirrors, which, as Tom was also referring to, it's nothing new. So yeah, I mean, it's a fault of both, bigger bill to Williams, perhaps justified, because I do, side with Owain, in this one, that, yeah, it's just, you can't expect that if you let someone pass you that they're going to be, intuitively thinking, oh, you're gonna come on the inside where I'm supposed to cross the track according to the racing line. Although, yeah, Stroll was very very annoying, shall I put it, in his press conferences, in his press comments after. So yeah, it's like I said, it's just Dumb and Dumber Canadian edition. That's it. It's not a good look for Canada, like Tom said. I am not happy with this, but again, it's two drivers that really have no place, in fighting for points. So this doesn't really hurt their outlooks on that side. But yeah, it's just it's dumb. It's stupid. It shouldn't be in F1 in this situation, especially in a qualifying Q1. And I mean, they ended up hurting half the field because we were quite close to having an accident after the red flag was lifted, just because of the fact that we had 7 cars going into basically within a gap of maybe 200 meters, because they wanted to all get a position. So that could have ended up even worse. And it all was because one guy doesn't look in his mirrors and the other guy thinks it's okay to undertake.
Yeah, it really wasn't just a good look for the sport in general. But we'll move away from the incident now. We'll get on to some predictions for tomorrow's race, because there is a race tomorrow. So Owain, we'll start with you. We'll go podium predictions first. Who do you think is going to be on the podium?
Podium wise, I think. You know what? I don't know. I think I'm going to go with Perez for third, Charles Leclerc for second, I think, and then Max Verstappen on top for first. I think that's. I think strategically, I think that Red Bull have a big upper hand with Carlos Sainz being so far down. Obviously, that's predicated on Sergio Perez not getting a penalty. But yeah, the information we have at the moment, I think that's going to be the order.
Okay, Tom, what's your podium?
Just before I say, I've just checked the FIA website. I have news on Stroll. Would like me to share with the group?
Go for it. Go for it.
So first of all, nothing on Latifi yet, but Lance Stroll causing the collision between car 6 and car 18. Decision: drop of 3 grid positions and 2 penalty points on his license. So he currently has 7 points on his license. Reason: the steward heard from both drivers. Team representatives examined video evidence. Latifi pulled off course to the left and slowed to the exit of turn 4 to let cars by the last approach to Stroll. At the exit of turn 5, Stroll appeared to not accelerate and was in the middle of the track. Latifi made the decision to accelerate and pass Stroll on the right as Stroll was moving right towards the right-hand edge of the track, where the track curved slightly to the right on the run to turn 6. Contact was made between them, blah, 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 and they all paddy. The stewards find that Stroll was predominantly to blame for the collision because of his lack of situational awareness of Latifi's passing manoeuvre. Go figure.
Mm.
Anyway, back to the podium. Don't think it's going to be Stroll. No, I would say Perez third. I'm going to agree with Owen. I'm going to say Perez third. What's his name? The Ferrari one. Monegasque.
Where?
Him, yeah. I went completely blank then. So I should be thinking about Stroll, just trying to mate with every single car on the grid. Leclerc second and then Verstappen first.
Okay, and Mikael.
Well, I'm not going to bring any variety to the 3 people on the podium, but I'll change their order up. I'm gonna. Then this is again still like Owen said, predicated on Perez starting third. I'm gonna go Leclerc third, Verstappen second, Perez wins.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the fact that Perez does get a penalty, which will either be for the 3 or 5 place grid drop, depending on what the situation. I think it's 3. But yeah, I'm going to go Max Verstappen to win, Charles Leclerc second, and then Lando Norris is going to get on that podium. He's going to do it. To be honest, I think even if Perez does get a penalty, he's probably still going to end up on the podium somehow. But I have faith. And now moving swiftly on to bold predictions, of course. Now, Wayne, I don't know if I've already made mine, but shoot in the dark. What's going to be your bold prediction?
I'm going to go with a Mercedes for the podium. That's a bold prediction, I think.
I think that is very bold. Imagine saying that 12 months ago. Tom?
Was a bold prediction, yeah?
Yeah.
My bold prediction is the Stroll doesn't crash into Latifi.
Number 2. And Mikael?
I don't know. Alonso 4th.
Fair enough.
He seems to have the pace. I just hope they don't start 15th because they have to fix things.
Yeah, of course that is going to be the worry for Alpine. But given the heroics of some mechanics this weekend, you never know. Alpine may be able to pull it off. So that is. Actually, I need to do my bold prediction. I don't know if I've already overstepped the mark with Lando on the podium, but okay, I'm going to go for the Haas. One of the Haas in the points. That's my other bold prediction. I'm really shooting in the dark here in terms of my predictions. But so yeah, that is all from us today. Before I finish the show, I should actually give out a massive shout out to Mary Beth Broadbent, who has become our first Patreon supporter. So thank you, thank you so much. We do have a Patreon if you would like to donate anything. Of course, it is completely up to you, but it goes to help towards better mics, lights, recording equipment, just to make our podcast as good as possible for you guys and make it as high quality as well. So yeah, if you're watching the live stream right now, you'll obviously know that we do live stream all of our shows on YouTube. And if you are watching later or on a different platform, just know that you can we live stream pretty much all of our shows. So if you want to watch them early and also interact with us in the chat, make sure to go to the Formula One Grid Talk YouTube channel, subscribe and turn notifications on so you know exactly when we go live or when we upload anything. We're also available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Omni Studio, Verbal, as well as the F1 Chronicle website. So just search for the F1 Grid Talk podcast. If you're a Sky Q or Sky Glass customer, you can check us out in the featured podcasts on the Sky Sports F1 page. So yeah, just another way that you can find us. And if you're stuck with something to listen to between now and tomorrow's race, even though it's very early in the morning, so I'm not sure what you'd need to fill in, but we do have a massive back catalogue of shows. We've got over 180 shows for you to listen to. Not all of them qualifying in race reviews, but also documentary style shows, as well as interviews with people like Mario Zola from Pirelli. If you give us a 5-star review on iTunes, we'll give you a shout out on our next show. And I think the same goes for Spotify as well. You can also leave us 5-star reviews. All feedback on our podcast is highly appreciated. And I'm sure Tom is absolutely loving the new fan base that he's acquiring through the show. So yeah, time for some plugs. So we'll start with you, Owain. Where can we find, or where can our listeners find more from you?
Yeah, luckily the entry time zone now is good enough that I can actually do them. Based on, but normally what I go through is I do a sort of lighter look at the race's action, and do a sort of roundup of the week of the sort of top 10 meetings of the race. Just sort of started internally, and now we publish it. So if you want to sort of like it started, especially last year, but moving to this year, before it gets any, before it gets into the mudslinging, it sort of tries to take a bit more of an objective look at things, but just from a sort of ability to laugh at both sides of any particular F1 coin. And you can and find me writing that on spotlightpro.com.
Okay, and Tom, where can we find more from you?
Yeah, so I'm part of Everything F1. You can find us across all our socials with the handle at TronEF1. You can get Everything F1 podcast on all the aforementioned podcasting platforms. Also, we have our website, which is everythingf1.com, where we have articles and general shenanigans.
Okay, and Mikael?
There isn't much to plug from me at the moment. Generally, just tend to jump on the pod here whenever I can. There are some pieces from me on Spotlight Pro, just like from Owain as well, but being a bit quiet there. So mostly, if you want anything from me, just jump on the pod. So whenever it comes out.
Okay, and for me, mostly just on the podcast. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, of course you can at L_G_Edwards. So if you want to listen to my very biased opinions on Formula One, opinions that I don't tend to share on the podcast in favor of a bit more, just being a bit more equal in my arguments. But you can find that on Twitter. So I want to thank all my guests for joining me today, and we'll be back tomorrow with the race review for the 2022 Australian Grand Prix. Goodbye.
Recording stopped.
Okay.
So nothing on Perez.
His thing was at 7, so I don't know what time.
13 minutes ago.
Yeah, so probably not. Yeah, he's probably still in with the stewards at the moment.
Just going to obsessively refresh the FIA page.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
In terms of post-show, Ruby, I don't know. It's up to people what they want to do. Because it is, I know it's 10:15 here in the UK, so
Early.
it's still early. I was still actually being
early enough that you can start to see the reflection of the I think it's a car window out. Yeah, it's a car window from the sun, which you never normally see.
But I think there's not too many people in the chat at the moment. There's been a few questions that sort of they've been chatting to. I think we'll skip over because for me to get on with the rest of my day. But Ruby, I think we'll cancel the post show for today. But everyone, thanks.